welcome back to another episode of the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm your host, Maureen, of course. We are absent Janice today because my last round of chemo was very, very difficult. I could not get things scheduled, and I just couldn't do much at all. It was my last round of the hard stuff, and it was very, very difficult. So, you have just me today, and I know that it may not be the preferred way to listen, but I want to make sure to get you this out. I also am making sort of an announcement with this. Our goal was to do some more fan fiction reads, and Janice and I are going to read some of them and hopefully be able to cover them. However, we are taking a bit of a break. We have, last week, you'll notice if you're in our group, our Sanditon Facebook group, which is the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club, I did not even get, we're still in our rewatch this week. Today starts episode 5. We're rewatching episode 5. And last week was episode 4, and I didn't even get any of our rewatch stuff out last week because I was in bed for almost the whole week. So while we take our break, I'm going to be focusing on the Facebook group a little bit more, and our social media, trying to get that stuff out. I start chemo every week starting on Monday. So before it was every other week, so I had time in between chemo treatments to record. I don't know what this new treatment plan is going to look like or what the new stage is going to look like. I don't know if I'm going to be out of it for an entire week and then right back into chemo and out for another week. So we're just going to take a bit of a hiatus at the moment. We're going to take a break between seasons, essentially. So we're going to have a season 1, and then season 2 might pick up when we do our first recap of season 2 of Sanditon. This is my new look. I don't think you guys have seen this yet. My bald head hair officially fell out. So that is what is happening here, and that's why you have just me today. So today we are talking about, I don't have a picture up here today, although this is, I have it next to me. I just didn't put it up because I'm doing some other recordings. We were talking Miss Clara Brereton today. I thought for sure that we had already discussed Clara. I thought we discussed Georgiana and Sydney. I guess I've been doing this for almost a year, every week, with the exception of, I think, 2, maybe 3 weeks. But I've been doing this every year, or every week for a year, almost. March 12th, it'll be a year. So we're roughly 2 to 3 weeks shy of a year. And we've done a lot of content in that time. And I swore we talked about Clara, but I guess we didn't. And I think Clara is a really interesting character, so I want to talk about her a little bit today. I have to have my water with me, so that's going to happen a lot during this episode. Chemo does a lot of things, and they're not all awesome and fun. So, Clara is an interesting case. I think Clara she's someone who, at first glance, you want her to be the villain. You want her to be a villain, at least. Especially because, at first, when you first watch this, I can remember this, the very first time I watched this series, I was endeared to Esther right away. I could tell that she was kind of on the wrong side, because obviously they were trying to compromise Clara and her reputation, obviously. So that's not a good thing. But I could see that Clara, Edward, and Esther were the 3 who had the potential to be villains. Ooh, got a chill right then. Have a potential to be villains, or were already the villain. Right? And the more I watched, the more I saw that Clara, she's not at all. She is, and I've talked about this a lot, but maybe this is why I thought I did a Clara one, because we've talked about Clara with other people, and we've talked about kind of how she's the victim of her circumstances, victim of her upbringing. And I know that there's circumstances can only be explained so far as an excuse, right? And we can say that today about people who are going through stuff, that your circumstances, you can only blame them so far before you take some responsibility for your actions. But here's the thing about her and the time period, because it was a different time then. I mean, if you were poor, you were poor. There wasn't really a way out of it other than marrying someone with money, other than getting into a social circle that had money. With Clara, it was she had a wealthy aunt or a wealthy cousin, right? Clara's her cousin? No, Clara is her niece. I think Lady Denham is her aunt, I believe. So that was her way out, was she had a wealthy relative that pulled her out and took her in. The other way was for a woman to marry someone with money, or even a man to marry someone with money. I like that there's that movie, Becoming Jane, that's about Jane Austen's life. And the cousin, the wealthy cousin who was a widower, um, she had said even men need to marry, even men need money to live. So, I mean, men could marry for money as well. But when you were poor, you were not well looked on. You weren't a great match for a marriage. You weren't, you were susceptible to a lot of things. You weren't really under a whole lot of protection, especially if you came from, Lady Denham makes the comment that there are many, many Breretons. So there are, when you have more mouths to feed, especially in that time, you had to get more work. And a lot of times it was servants in a household or whatever. It's not like kids could come with you to that all the time. There were benevolent people all over the place that would let you take your entire brood of children to work with you. And I could have my understanding of that time period distorted too. I mean, I did study history in college, but it wasn't my major, so I didn't really delve too much into this. A lot of my understanding of this time period comes from what I did study in college, which was minimal, and reading books from that time period and from authors who were writing in that time period, like Jane Austen. She wrote in that time period. So things like that. That's where I get my understanding of the time period. But I do know that being poor was almost a death sentence. For Clara, it would have been had she stayed there. Now, what was unfortunate for her is that, now, not all poor people were depraved. That's not what I'm saying. But there was far less protection for you as a poor person than there was if you had money, than if you had connections. And that's why everything was like a business deal. Marriage was a business deal. Climbing up the ranks in society was a business deal. Everything was a business deal because connections made or broke you. And money made or broke you. So for her, she was unfortunately, now I don't have an understanding, because we aren't given it, of if she comes from a family that has many, many, many siblings. We just know that there's many Breretons. So maybe her parents had a lot of kids and she got overlooked. I don't know what the case is there. But we do say that for her it was an uncle who sexually abused her. And you have to guess from the way that she acts, from the way that she is able to adapt to situations, to get out of situations, to confront situations, to even get ahead of them, like she did with Edward, where she preempted him, as he said. Talking about that situation makes me a little uncomfortable. But she even says that, I think she's honest when she tells Charlotte, I had to do something I didn't want to do to avoid something much worse. I think she's being completely honest there. I think because she's seen enough men who were that abusive, she's seen enough men who were that slimy, that she knew what Edward was going to do, and she knew what his plan was, because she's not stupid. She's been in that position before. She's had people who have come at her before in that way, and she knew that living with Lady Denham was her escape from what she came from. She even makes the reference to, and again, I think she's being honest here when she tells Esther, you have no idea what I came from and no idea what I'm willing to endure to ensure I stay. Now, if she's willing to mutilate her own body to stay, she's not a crazy person. What she came from had to have been so horrific. So you have to imagine that there was sexual abuse, there was probably physical abuse, there was verbal abuse, there was, if she was poor, she wasn't living in a good area, she wasn't living in a house that had a lot of rooms or a lot of space, she was probably hungry a lot, it was probably filthy. There's all these different ways that could lead to really terrible things for her if she stayed there. So there's all these glimpses that Clara gives us that, yeah, it seems like she's being the bad guy here, but she's not. And when it comes to Edward and Esther and her, as much as I love Esther, Edward and Esther are the villains there. Clara's just hanging out at her aunt's house. She was taken in, and she's going to ensure she stays. She's going to ensure that she stays on her aunt's good side. She's going to make sure that she is a good conversationalist. She's a good trophy piece for her aunt to parade around, whatever. But it's Edward and Esther who are planning to violate her, and who are planning to completely ruin her. So she not only has no chance with Lady Denham, who's going to kick her out, but she also has no chance with any respectable man in the near vicinity, because her reputation will be completely ruined, and then she won't be touched with a 10-foot pole, right? So Clara's not the bad guy here. Clara is someone who understands the dangers of what Edward and Esther are doing, and she preempts them. And the other time, I honestly think whenever she talks to Esther, she's being fairly honest. And when she says to Esther, we shouldn't be enemies, And Esther said, well, how can we not be? We're fighting over the same thing. And she says, money, because she understands that there is an inappropriate thing happening there. She doesn't really know how far it goes, I don't think, until she sees Edward and Esther in that room when he's tightening her stays and he's kissing her on the neck. I think it's at that moment that it clicks. Okay, so this is what the inappropriate relationship is. It's not just that Esther wants her brother, it's that she has her brother and it's a problem. And so when she talks to Esther and she says, for me it was an uncle, she's genuinely trying to help Esther there. And I think she was genuinely trying to help Esther when she said we shouldn't be enemies. She was being honest. They shouldn't be enemies. They had no reason to be enemies other than, there was an inheritance at stake, but I don't think they would qualify them being enemies. They could find some advantage for each other. And I think that's how Clara's head worked, is she always looked for the advantage in a situation, whether it was with a friendship, whether it was with relatives, whether it was with money, whether it was with physical place that they were at. She always looked for the advantage because I think she always had to have a plan B. And you can see her thinking of that in the bathtub scene when she sees the hot water tank and she's contemplating what her next move is after Lady Denham says that. So I think that her getting into the bath, I think she'd already realized, okay, something has to happen here. And though she was enjoying the bath at first, I think her head was still trying to think through what her next move was. Because Lady Denham had done an about face. When she said, I think it's time we talk about the terms of your stay. And we see that, eventually Edward and Clara do have relations in there, and it was not okay, and it was inappropriate, and they burned Lady Denham's will, which is terrible. I personally think that Clara likely found the will relatively recently to when she hoisted it up for Edward. I don't think she had a lot of opportunity to find it before Lady Denham got sick, and I think she probably found it in there, or at least knew where it was and finally had read it. But I think knowing that all of the money was going towards Sanditon, the town, and towards the donkey thing, I think she was so infuriated that she would be so forgotten, that she would be so left out when she was going through a great deal to ensure that Lady Denham was not only happy with her, but happy in general. She jumped through hoops to make sure Lady Denham was happy. And there were a lot of hoops that Lady Denham made her jump through just so that, Lady Denham could be happy. And so I think she was really angered and really not hurt, because I think she has such a hard shell from the years of abuse she probably endured. I don't think she was hurt by it. I think she was angry. I think she felt, certainly looked over, but what is the word I am looking for here? I think she felt spurned. Like it was the biggest slap in the face, punch to the gut that you could have given Clara, was leaving her out of that will, and not just leaving her only a little in the rest of the town, but completely leaving her out. And I think in that moment she saw an advantage. Okay, if I could get Edward on my side with this, I could get Edward to burn the will, and then I could say he did it, and it'll be the truth. But also, if I have these relations with Edward, then Edward is now on my side, and I can get what I want from Edward when he receives the inheritance, if he's the one who does. So, even having those relations, she used that as a tactic to get what she needed. She even says when they're done, a quarter share, he said, you said a fifth. It's a lady's prerogative to change her mind. And then when he comes back at it, she's like, a quarter. Esther won't want to know about this, will she? So even in that motive, I doubt it's the situation all over again. I had to do something I didn't want to do to stop me from doing something even worse. I think that's what the situation was when she had relations with Edward in the dining room or on the floor. She didn't really want to, but it was another tactic. It was a way for her to get what she would need out of Edward. And obviously she didn't plan for Lady Denham to find out about it. She wanted Esther to know about it, but I think part of her telling Esther was saving Esther. I really do. I don't know if everyone's going to agree with me on this, but I genuinely think that when she tells Esther that all the things that they did, I was lying on the floor, and Esther slaps her. And she says, oh, maybe it's because you haven't given yourself to him. I think that she is trying to cut the ties for Esther, because Clara's already damaged and broken, and Clara said to her, we should not be enemies. The enemies should be Edward and Clara. If Esther and Clara teamed up, they could have anything. right? So I think that she genuinely cared for Esther. Esther didn't do anything wrong. Of course, I don't think she's fully aware that Esther had help in, planning her ruining, so to speak. I don't think she knew Esther had a plan in that, or hand in that. But she does know that Esther is controlled by Edward. And I think that she knew that if Esther would cut those ties, then Esther could be free from that. And I think that there was an understanding in Clara that even if it hurts, even if it feels wrong and cruel, that there is a very real benefit to it. And I think that Esther couldn't see that clearly. And Esther, I think it'd be interesting to see in episode 2. It'll be interesting to see in episode 2 what their interaction is, because we actually see in one of the promo pictures Esther and Clara talking to each other, or at least sitting across from each other. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out after that, to see if Esther is grateful for that intervention, so to speak, that Clara did, where she had the relations with Edward, told Esther, and that's what cut the tie, to really see who Edward was, what he was like. If she's grateful to Clara for that, or if she still holds Clara as a villain for ruining that for her. I'm really curious to see how that will play out in Esther's character. But I really think that Clara was doing it for her benefit. Much like, yes, she was taunting her when they were, after she saw them in Denham Place, she was taunting her in front of Lady Denham. When she's like, really? I thought you rather cared for Edward. I didn't think anyone would top him. In that scene, she's obviously taunting them. And then at the piano, she's obviously taunting Esther then. She's not taunting Edward. He has no scruples about what he's doing. And Clara knows that because she understands what kind of man Edward is. Edward is a man who will do whatever he wants, however he wants, to get whatever he wants. And he doesn't feel bad about it. And that's why I think Edward is the real villain of Sanditon. And with Clara, she was taunting Esther because she knew how to get under her skin. And I think she was banking on the fact that she was going to run out, because she spent enough time with Esther. I think she knows her. And then when they're all in the outside Lady Denham's house, Sanditon house, she's talking to her about it. And she's like, you love him? And Esther says she doesn't want her pity. And because she says, Esther words that, if we were not for the same name, we would be. And Clara says, you would what? You can't think you have a future with him. Some part of you knows there could never be a future with him. Everything that Clara says to her is from an empathetic point of view. I think she's genuinely trying to give Esther some real serious advice, some good counsel, and trying to honestly be a friend to her. And when she says, for me it was an uncle, she's giving a part of herself. She's telling her, hey, I've been where you are. And so I think that every interaction Clara has with Esther is from the point of view that I'm not your enemy. We're not enemies. We shouldn't be. I'm not your enemy. And I think that's when she says we shouldn't be enemies. She's saying, I'm not your enemy. So you don't have any bones with me. You don't have anything to be upset with me about. And I think that was a real thing. I think she genuinely wanted to help Esther out of that, which makes her, it's backwards because she's doing something she shouldn't be doing. But again, that's what she knows. She knows how to survive those hard situations. She knows how to get out of those hard situations, even when it means doing something you don't want to do. Even when it means risking your reputation to get out of it. She understands what it takes to do that because that's what she's had to do. The uncle who abused her, he could ruin her at any point in time. She got out. She found a way to get out. I'd be interested to know that backstory of how Lady Denham chose Clara to come in. How Clara was the one who was picked. Because I want to know if scheme feels like a too harsh of a word for. I want to see if it was her doing that she was picked, if she had manipulated the situation to be picked to go Lady Denham, if she had gotten someone else to vouch for her to go. I'm curious how that worked out, how it played out. Because when she said, no idea what I've endured before coming here, and no idea what I would do to ensure I stay, there is something that she had to have done to go, right? To get out of that situation, because that's who Clara is. That's what she does. She knows how to survive those. And if she's willing to do anything to not go back there, you have to think that she had a hand in coming. Somehow, whether it was her idea, maybe that she reached out to her mom, and mom reached out to Lady Denham. I don't know, obviously, and none of us know, obviously. I think it would be really fun to watch the writing team come up with a story pre-Jane Austen, where Jane Austen started, to come up with a backstory for all these characters. Because honestly, I mean, these characters started as Jane Austen characters. These characters, some of them, not all of them, started as Jane Austen characters and came from Jane Austen's head, came from her own writing, but they made them their own. They are no longer Jane Austen. Jane Austen didn't write anything past episode 1. So they are Jane Austen inspired. So I would really, I would buy that book if the writing team wrote a prequel to Sanditon, and so we could see where all of the characters were before this. So we could see Sydney's mess. We could see where Clara came from. We could see what happened with Edward and Esther's parents. We could see Lady Denham's story. You know, you even see Tom's story. I'm interested to know how the Parker's parents died. I think that would be a really fantastic piece to add to this, a prequel to Sanditon. And especially with Clara, because she's so smart. She is. She's smart about how she does things. And she knows when to push Lady Denham. She knows when to, except for with the arm, that time. When and Lady Denham asked her to go out. She said, oh, but my arm. Your arm is fine. So she still has a little bit to learn. But obviously, Lady Denham is letting her in somehow, because there's another promo picture where I think the one where she's sitting with Esther, Lady Denham is right there. So she's obviously managed to come back in somehow, right? She's obviously managed to come back into Sanditon, to come back into Lady Denham's fold. I'm really, really excited and anxious to see how she came back, whether it was, and honestly, maybe judging by the bathtub scene, how, oh, my poor child. And, you know, we already did the Lady Denham-Clara relationship. But I wonder if Clara might have prefaced it to her that Edward took advantage of her and Edward forced himself on her. And Lady Denham could believe that, I'm sure. So I'm wondering how she got access to Lady Denham and how Lady Denham allowed her to be close enough again after kicking her out and banishing her, essentially. Lady Denham says that they won't darken her door again, but there she is. And she seems to be dressed well. So unless she is married to somebody, I mean, who knows? Maybe she got Crow drunk enough and he agreed to marry her. I don't know. It's all speculation until March 20th. So, but I'm curious about her because I keep looking down because I'm looking at my picture of Clara, which actually helps talking about her. And I know Liana did this, but it's a fairly accurate picture. I mean, let's see if I can put it over here. Focus on this face. There we go. It's a fairly accurate picture of her. And I think she's incredibly intelligent. Not books, but I think Clara, because of her background, because of what she experienced, I think she's a great reader of people. I think that she can look at you and have you figured out. I think that's clear in the ballroom scene too, if you think about it. After, when she's talking to Clara or Charlotte, and she talks to her about what she saw, and Crow comes up, and he's like, "Can I ask you?" "Could I ask you to come back on the dance floor with me?" And she's like, "Oh, certainly, sir." And she was just talking about something so serious with Charlotte, something that was dark and heavy and possibly reputation ruining. And Crow comes up, and she knows that he likes the fun, he likes the vivacious, he likes the overt, and she reacts accordingly. She becomes this light, funny girl. And with Lady Denham, she becomes subservient. With Edward, she becomes that flirt because he likes a challenge. With Esther, she is being a true friend. With Clara, she's a little more meek and mild. So she has all these different personalities. It's not really that she has different personalities. I was going to say that, but it's not really so. It's that she can read a person and see what they need to see what they need to hear, and act accordingly. She's learned how to read people. She's been forced to deal with neglect after abuse, after neglect, after abuse, and she's able, through those, she's able to pinpoint when someone isn't worth it, when someone is, and by not worth it, I mean abuser. I think an abuser is not worth anybody's time. Certainly not if you're going to abuse a kid and you're their uncle, you're going to abuse your niece. That's really disgusting and horrifying and terrible, and I can't imagine what that was like for her. But I think that for her, she was probably able... I think that for her, she was probably able to spot an abuser from a mile away. She was probably abused enough that she could see what tactics they used, that she could see how they would get to the family. And the uncle, I mean, of course, the man was more the head of the family, so we don't really know if like he was a grumpy, surly old guy or if he was considering himself as a kind, fun uncle. We don't know. But I'm sure that with the other abuses that she endured, there were probably men who would pretend to be something they're not to get access. Whether that's to her, whether it's to the family, who we can't say. We can't even say if there were other abuses. I'm just saying, based on how she talks about these things and about how she acts with the uncle and saying, don't know what I endured before coming here, those things would indicate more than just one abuse. More than just one person, I would imagine. For it to be that horrific, it has to be more. And so that's what I'm using to say she's had other abuses. So she can read people, she can find them, she can seek what they want, she can tell right away who Edward was. He's a narcissist who doesn't care about anybody but himself, who is only out for himself, who will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. And she played to that. She did. She played exactly to that. She knew that if with that time that Charlotte found him in the woods, she knew that if she could do that, he would stop his advances on her because she's taking care of him at that moment. And you just have to speak to Edward's vanity. And with Clara and Charlotte, she was honest with Charlotte and open with Charlotte and thought that maybe Charlotte understood. But as she talked to Charlotte, she saw how innocent she was. From that point on, she was very meek, very sweet, and very mild-mannered with Charlotte because that's what Charlotte was. And it made Charlotte comfortable. With Esther, she didn't... The more they talked, the more they got together, the more Esther threatened or Esther came at her, the more open Claire became about what she was doing, and why. If Esther was paying attention, she would hear the words that Clara was really saying. That, hey, I came from something terrible. Hey, my uncle abused me in a sexual way. And if Esther had a clear head enough about Edward in that time, you could actually hear what Claire was saying to her. I don't think she would call her a rat who would chew off her own tail if it meant surviving. Because that's not what Clara is. She's not a rat. She's someone whose innocence in childhood was forced away from her and who was forced to find a way to cope and forced to find a way to release herself from that position. And that's what she will always do. And I think it's telling. We see Edward and Esther on Edward and Clara, right after Lady Tatum kicks him out, and she's standing by. I want to say she's standing by a sidewalk fence, maybe. But she says, "But Edward, I had nothing to lose. You've lost everything." She's going back to that place. She's resolute, but she's already thinking of her next move. And of course, if that deleted scene was kept in, then we would see that she goes off with Crow. Instead of going back to where she lives in London, to where her family is living in the poorhouse, she goes back with Crow. So she's resilient because she has to be. She's prepared to lose everything if that's what it takes. She doesn't want to lose everything. But if she has to push boundaries to ensure her safety, she'll do it. And she does it constantly. And that's what she did with Edward. She took it a step too far by giving it to Esther. But I think even that, again, I think it was saving Esther from herself. I think it was stopping the relationship with Edward that Esther had without Esther having to sacrifice who she was. I really think she thought she was saving Esther. And she did that willingly. That was the biggest sacrifice she made because it lost Clara every advancement she had with Lady Denham. So I'm curious to see how she comes back. If she comes back married to a guy with money, if she comes back by getting Lady Denham's sympathy by Edward forcing himself on her. I'm just curious. What do you think? How do you think she'll come back? What do you think her reason will be for being in touch with Lady Denham again? I really want to know. So I think she's just a really dynamic character. I really like Clara. I feel like I can understand Clara. I feel like she is one of those complex characters who is not what she seems. And not just that she's not what she seems, but there's a depth to her that I don't think we've even begun to explore yet. And I really hope that in season 2 we get to explore it a little bit more. I hope that we get to see a little more into why Clara is the way she is. I mean, we're told a lot of it in season 1, but I want to see why Clara is the way she is. A part of me wants to see where her family is and what those conditions are like. I don't think we're going to see that, but I'm interested in that. I'm interested in her storyline. I'm interested in her as a character. I'm interested in what she has coming down because she's complex, and she's dynamic, and she is vivacious, and she's a really, really interesting character. You know, you have those characters who are cause the drama or who are the crazy ones in these shows, and those are usually the most fun to watch. And not that Clara is fun to watch. I mean, she's not unfun. But it's not that she's fun to watch for me. It's just that when she's on the screen, and this could be totally a credit to Lily as well, but when she's on the screen, you want to know more about her. You're left with questions about her. And sometimes in an ensemble show, it's hard to get that about one single character. But I feel that with Clara, when she's left the screen, I still have questions. I still want to know more. When she was kicked out of Lady Denham's, I wanted to know where she was going to go, why she was going to go there, how she was going to defend herself. I wanted to know it all. I wanted to be a part of that journey with her. And I hope we don't miss too much of that. I know it's coming back 9 months later, but I hope we don't miss too much of that. I'm wondering if 9 months is symbolic too. That time frame. So I really enjoy when she's on screen, and I really think a lot of it is a huge credit to how Lily plays her. I think Lily did an excellent job creating these different nuances in Clara, where she's alternate times subservient. There's for instance, after Charlotte walks in on her in the woods, right? She comes into Lady Denham's, and she's very nervous. She's pulling at her sleeves, and she's like clearing her throat and clearing her hair, and she's very nervous. But at other times, there's this way that she perks her head, or tips her head and perks her lips. That's really, like, she's about to dig a knife in. There's other times where she has this way of looking over her eyelids at someone where it's, okay, I see what you're doing there. So Lily really gave the character of Clara a lot of really interesting depth just by how she portrayed her, by the facial expressions and the body movements and the way she situated herself in a room. She gave Clara a lot of depth. And I'm really interested to see what she brings in the second season. I think it's going to be really good. I think that it's going to be really fun to watch her come on screen again, to watch her kind of explode and explore that. I think it's going to be fascinating. And I hope you guys are there for it. I hope you guys are really interested in it. And I've had speaking to season 2, I've had some people unfortunately say that they are not invested in season 2, that they are going to boycott everything that the writers do now because of they didn't get what they wanted in this, or there's no way that they can come back from this, or whatever. I really hope that that's not your final answer, if that is you. I really hope that you give season 2 a chance, if for nothing else, because you fought for it so hard, just to see what they're offering, to see what they did with what they had and what they were able to get. I think that I think that everyone on this project has worked even the Sanditon Sisterhood, I mean, and I don't just mean all of us as a whole, because we are part of the Sanditon Sisterhood, but the group Sanditon Sisterhood, the spearheaded campaign that they did, they and all of us worked really hard to get this second season, to get more of Sanditon. And I would hate to believe that someone missed out because they didn't get a single storyline they got, because Sanditon itself is a whole character, and it's a magical place, and it's a place that has so much potential for greatness that's beyond a specific storyline, that's beyond even a specific character. There's so much that can be done with this that I really hope that you give it a shot. Again, if for no other reason than just because you fought for it. And, maybe watch it to prove us wrong. It would have been better if this. Watch it to prove us wrong and see where you end up at. Because I have a feeling with this team of people who cared so much about this project, and these actors who cared so much to come back after 2 years and do this for us, because we are who they're doing it for. They didn't do it, they get paid, it's their job. But we, the fans, fought so hard for this, and these actors cared enough about this project and about the fans who fought for it that they were willing to come back and do more with it. Give them an opportunity to show you what they were able to create, because they love this project as much as we did, as much as we do. So I just want to encourage you, if you are someone who is really fighting and struggling with whether or not you're going to watch it, what does it hurt to give it a shot? What does it hurt? I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised. Because again, it's not just about Sydney and Charlotte. It was never about just them. That's why we were given all these other dynamic characters right off the bat. Jane Austen introduced us to all these other characters. Not all of the characters that are on Sanditon, but she introduced us to a bevy of characters. This was never just about them. In fact, it was supposed to be about brothers. But this town has become a character. So watch it for that. Watch it to see what you're given. That's just my 2 cents. I get sad when people say they're not going to give it a shot, because it's going to be worth it, I promise you. And if you want to talk more Sanditon, even if you don't want to invest in Season 2, which I think is a mistake, and you just want to talk Season 1, come join us in our Facebook group. It's Sanditon, the Sanditon Chronicles, Sanditon Family Fan Club. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter. Again, I haven't done much, especially since I had cancer. I haven't done a whole lot with our social media, but I do post on there occasionally. Check us out there under the Sanditon Chronicles. And it looks like we're about to take a 4-week break, a month break, before March 20th. So we'll catch you guys in a month. Bye. Stay safe.